too often, I think in our world, we grow up being taught that we should run away from emotions that we label as negative. Every emotion we feel has a purpose. It serves a purpose. And quite often, if we're feeling anger or sadness or frustration or pain, that is the conduit towards bigger growth, bigger opportunities, change. Imagine going to see a movie that had no climax, nothing dangerous, nothing upsetting, and it was just rainbows and roses the entire time. We would not think of it as this incredible movie versus when we go through the gamut of emotions. And our human life is like that too, but we're often taught to run away from those emotions.
Welcome to the Work Less, Play More podcast for busy entrepreneurs who are ready to ditch the hustle, stop burning out on busy work, and get back to having a life. My name is Lindsay Johnson, aka The Radical Connector, and I've spent the last 10 years teaching first-time entrepreneurs how to get customers and make money. Listen in as I chat with other hustle-recovering business owners as we share our top tips for, you guessed it, working less and playing more. Let's do this. Friends, welcome back to the Work Less, Play More podcast. I am so excited you're here. We have the best conversation happening today. And I know I say that every time, but today we have Keka DasGupta from the Art of Lifing. And friends, I have known Keka for many years and she is one of my favorite human beings. And she's here today to talk about the art of lifing, living on purpose, with purpose, and dare I say, feeling our feelings and how that affects the way we show up in our brands and in our businesses. For over 24 years, Keka has worked in the PR and marketing industry with clients such as Disney, Nike, IKEA, American Express, Johnson & Johnson, etc. During this time, she's received more than 50 national and international awards. Today, this TEDx international keynote and certified virtual speaker and founder of the Art of Lifing runs groundbreaking mental wellness programs for the education sector, businesses, and community groups, guiding individuals young and old to recognize their own personal value so they can give the best of them to themselves and to others. Be sure to check out the show notes for all the ways you can connect with Keka and follow her online, as well as all of the fun resources that we mentioned in our conversation. Without further ado, let's get into it. Keka, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. It's so good to be here with you, Lindsay.
I know. I am so excited. And I know I always say that I'm always so excited because I am so excited for our conversation. We met 3 years ago, 4 years ago.
You know what? I actually think it was even more. It was longer than that because I go based on how old my kids were. And my younger one is 11 and I think it was like maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
But yes, we met in Toronto, like how I met most cool people when I lived there. And that was at a networking event. And we clearly hit it off.
Yeah, I still remember the really cool coffee shop near your place that we went to visit. That's like in my memory.
Right. There's this coffee shop where there were hearts everywhere. I would always get hot chocolates. I'm still a hot chocolate, fiend. I love my hot cocos. And they served it with the toasted marshmallow on top.
And wasn't it like the marshmallows were made in-house or something? There was like a really cool story around that.
It was all like, it was so like fancy and pretentious and hipster and awesome.
I love that. Pretentious and hipster all in one.
All in one. So when we originally met, you were working on, I'm going to get it so wrong, but it was like what you would say to somebody who had died, but when they were living.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh my gosh, you've got such a good memory. So,
I can't remember what it's called.
I was in marketing. I had a boutique marketing agency, but I was in that, oh my God, what am I going to do with my life? It's more than marketing. I need to do more. The universe was pushing me and I had no idea where. And I was playing with the idea of living legacy letters. Because I was talking about how I had written my mom a living eulogy. And it was profoundly impactful both on her and me. And I was like, I think the whole world needs to know this. And I was trying to figure out as a brand marketer what the positioning would be. I was thinking about living legacies, but then people are so uncomfortable with death in North America. And they don't want to think about it. They want to run away from it. And so ultimately, I still talked about the living eulogy, but in a different brand umbrella, shall we say. But I'm impressed with your memory, Lindsay. That's awesome.
So this is going to be weird, but was there a fish involved?
There was a fish. Yes. And actually that appeared in my TEDx talk.
Yeah.
So there's a story about the story I share in my TEDx talk around gratitude and paying gratitude forward. Because I had a really great friend of mine, Carlene, that I'd known since I think grade 1, junior kindergarten, I can't even remember. And in grade 3, being the procrastinator that I was even back then, I had a science experiment due, and of course it was due in 3 days, and I was panicking because I had not thought of what I was going to do it on. And I was in the library in our school, and Carlene came up and she was trying to console me in my stress. And I pulled out a book about aquariums and fish. And in my desperate moment, I said to Carlene, maybe I'll do something around fish. I don't know. And then the bell rang. We had to go back to class. I put the book away. The next day, she comes into the hallway and she's holding this like little art piece between 2 paper plates. And it had like birthday streamer, it was like a yellow streamer wrapped around it. And she came running over to me and she said, I was at my babysitter's last night. I couldn't do a lot, but I made you this paper mache goldfish for your science project. Oh my God, Lindsay, like my heart melted. I couldn't believe that she had thought of me that way and went to that kind of trouble and did something without me asking her. And the crazy thing was that I had come clean to my mom the night before in my panic, and she helped me come up with this idea around shadows. It would be fast and easy to do. And I didn't even have the heart to tell Carlene I had another topic. So I accepted the goldfish with a lot of love, and I said, thank you. And then I had that goldfish in my house forever. Like literally, I think it was like 30 years later, the paper mache had disintegrated. I had like remnants of paper birthday string. And it always stuck with me, but I hadn't ever come to her and said thank you for how much that meant. And I was one of her bridesmaids at her wedding. This is how close we were, but I'd never said it. Yeah. So in the TEDx talk, I shared that story, and I had another friend of mine created this really beautiful graphic image of a goldfish, and it said heart of gold. So I had it really nicely framed, and I showed it in the TEDx talk. And then I actually did a follow-up video with her when I surprised her with it. And the most beautiful thing was that now she has 2 sons. And I said, I want your sons to see this. This is your heart. And it's the imprint that you've left on me that from grade 3 still till today, it's vivid. And I'm so grateful in my mind for the impact you had on me.
That's so amazing. What was her reaction?
Oh my gosh.
I'm getting emotional. So
I wanted to surprise her in person and show her the TEDx talk, but life gets busy. She's a single mom now with 2 kids. And so I ended up just sending her the link to the TEDx talk. And I said, okay, I just want you to watch the TEDx talk and then we'll talk afterwards. And so she told me that when she was at work and over her lunch hour, she said, okay, I'm just going to take a moment and watch this talk. And she said she was crying at the office in her work. People were like, what happened? She's like, my friend just talked about this. So it was beautiful. And then I did actually have her at my house where we taped a full thing where I gave her the actual piece. But this is the beautiful thing about sharing gratitude that sort of made me excited about the work that I do now, is that whenever we validate somebody by sharing that gratitude and actually not waiting till they leave the room to talk about how awesome they are, but telling them to their face how awesome they are, that sticks with us. It's the greatest validation that we matter. And if we do more of that around us, the mental health challenges we have, the dynamics can change because we're in a habit and in a culture where we don't always share. And I just want people to share. So that was my way of being able to portray the message in real time was to share that.
The idea or the principle, I'm going to call it a principle, the principle of mattering, that you matter. I literally just did an Instagram post on that. I think last week, this week, time isn't real. But I just did a post on that about like, if you think what you have to say isn't important and isn't needed, if you think what you are feeling called to create doesn't matter, like you matter, everything you've got to say and do matters. Yes. And I agree that the tie in there to mental health and taking it even a step further into belonging and community and support. There's a great book that I read. I forget what it is right now, but she talked about sadness being a beacon, not a barrier, not a burden. And that we have this tendency when things are tough to isolate and not use it as a beacon to call people in, or for other people to see it as a beacon to come in. I think that's sort of along that same vein of something so simple. It
can
makes
life-changing difference for people.
Life-changing, life-saving sometimes.
I think too often, I think in our world, we grow up being taught that we should run away from emotions that we label as negative. Every emotion we feel has a purpose. It serves a purpose. And quite often, if we're feeling anger or sadness or frustration or pain, that is the conduit towards bigger growth, bigger opportunities, change. Imagine going to see a movie that had no climax, nothing dangerous, nothing upsetting. And it was just rainbows and roses the
Yep.
entire time, we would not think of it as this incredible movie versus when we go through the gamut of
Yep.
emotions. And our human life is like that too, but we're often taught to run away from those emotions.
Yes.
I was always taught that if I cried, it was a sign of weakness and that it was bad, certainly in the work world, that it was unprofessional. For me, from the time that I was really little, I always felt really deeply for people. And I was literally having this conversation the other day with a friend of mine. And I said, when I've been in leadership positions at work and somebody comes in and has the trust in me to share something confidential, we'll go into a private office or private room and we're talking and they start to cry. Oh my God, Lindsay, when they cry, my floodgates immediately open. I see someone cry, I just start to cry. And now I've learned to caveat it with, don't worry, I'm okay, but this is how my body reacts. But I used to feel so deeply for people and I would cry or I would mirror their emotions. And I was taught that I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And when we do that to people, we start to learn to hide ourselves. And then we start hiding ourselves from ourselves, which is where then all of these things happen. So when you share gratitude, when you share in the moment what you're feeling, you're giving people validation for the impact that they have. And suddenly it helps them to see themselves.
Yeah.
This is why the program that I do at schools and at corporations, I call it gratitude mirrors, because when you're sharing gratitude, what I really see you doing is you're holding up a mirror to somebody else and saying, this is how I see you.
Yeah.
This is the magic I see in you that we often don't see for ourselves.
I think about the different messaging, internalized messaging we get around showing gratitude. Is it a sign of weakness? Is it a sign that you couldn't figure it out on your own and you should be embarrassed and ashamed of yourself? In a society that hyper focuses on independence and not connection and community, I wonder how much we're unable to show gratitude because of that.
And I think that there's two dynamics at play there. I think number one, we don't want to show gratitude because then we're feeling, and feelings are weak, right?
Yes.
We want to talk about measurement and math and like all the things in our head, even though working in advertising, I can tell you there's been so much research done around this, that 95% of the decision making that we make in our brains, the way we are wired, 95% of that is based on our emotional interpretation of a situation. 5% is left for the rational component. However, that 5% is reserved to rationalize our emotional decision making. And so our world moves based on emotion because every decision we make is based on emotion, but we like to pretend that's not the case. So if we say to somebody, practice gratitude and show somebody that emotion, I'm not going to show that emotion. I don't want to be in touch with that. That's number one. But then there's also a movement today around positivity, and there's the terminology of toxic positivity, where no matter how bad things get, we don't acknowledge it. We just have to pretend everything is rainbows and roses. And what happens in both cases is we're out of alignment with who we are inside. And when we're out of alignment, everything feels off, but we're in denial. At the end of the day, if we can't actually be who we are, then we're in denial. And this is one of the things, Lindsay, that I get very passionate about. When I was first starting to do this work, I knew there was power in this message around gratitude. I take my own personal stories, I share it. I've been in branding and public relations and marketing for 24 years now. So over the 2.5 decades that I've been doing this, everything I do is based on emotion because we know emotion sells. But we don't talk about it. That's the unspoken rule. And so I was going in and trying to do these gratitude workshops. And I'm like, I don't have a teacher's degree. I don't have a certification that has gratitude in its name. I have a psych degree. That was like a long time ago. Somehow that doesn't count anymore in my head. I don't know. And I was doubting myself to say, who am I to do this? But I also knew that I just needed to listen to the calling that I felt, however the universe was pushing me, I just needed to do it. So I was going in and doing it anyway, fully expecting somebody would challenge me on my expertise. And nobody challenged me. They were really kind, really nice. And so then I started to take that in. And then it occurred to me over time as I kept questioning, who am I? Do I have the right to do this? I said, oh, wait a minute. I've been helping connect people to people and people to brands for 24 years. The emotional undercurrents that make us flow, I've been a student of that for 2.5 decades. And in the marketing world, if you think about the way brands work, brands stand in their power. Coca-Cola will never try to be Pepsi, won't even be envious of Pepsi. Coca-Cola is like, I bring joy to the world. You can open happiness with me. I am red. Look at my bottle silhouette. If you go to a Coca-Cola branded event, you're going to see the logo everywhere. You'll see the red color everywhere, the wave, all of that. And none of us question that. We expect brands to sell themselves. But then when I'm going into a job interview or I'm going in to present something and I need to present myself with the same confidence, I'm worried people are going to tell me I have an ego. Oh, she's an egomaniac. She's all about herself.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, oh, I need to be a servant leader with everybody else. But how do these brands help the world? They stand in their power. And so that was like the big light bulb moment for me, was like, wait a minute, if we take branding strategies in terms of how brands center themselves and who they are, and we actually apply that lens to our own mental health and the way we connect to ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, it's transformative, because nobody's ever given us permission to stand in our power like that, but I feel like it's time. The tides are turning. We're getting there.
I agree. I think that I've been seeing certainly all over different social media content creators, whatnot, talking about we're really great at like knowing our feelings, logically approaching our feelings, thinking about our feelings, but we are terrible at feeling our feelings. So even what you had said earlier about death, we don't like facing death and dealing with death. I remember reading a while ago, somebody had written about how especially in North America, we are so detached from death, when it used to be that you would die at home surrounded by family, and now you die alone surrounded by nurses and doctors. And we're so far removed. We've started saying, if I die, instead of when I die.
Yeah. Because we're in denial.
Because we're in
we don't
denial.
want that day to come.
And between that and the feelings are bad and this is weakness and all these things, we get so detached from our emotions, which is ironic because brands use our emotions to sell us things that help us stay distracted from our emotions. Like it is a trip. But yeah, I do agree. I notice this a lot in younger generations, a willingness to talk about feelings, to feel the feelings, to go into the feelings, to stand in the feelings and exist.
Yeah. And that's really when we can experience true freedom. And I think that when we look at the mental health challenges that our societies are facing today, and this is part of what I'm really passionately fighting around, is that we have a self-worth crisis.
Yes.
We are so hard on ourselves. It's become so normal for us to take our inner critic and amplify that and make that the loudest voice. So many people are facing social anxiety because we're worried about what other people will think, because we're not letting ourselves stand in our power and think about it and be that person who makes a stand. And this is the kind of thing where I feel like if we take a page from brands, because we all have brands we love, all know how brands work. We know that brands stand for values. We choose our brands based on what we're aligned with. So we accept these rules for brands to be selfish and be self-centered and do the things they want to do. And we don't do it for ourselves. As soon as we start to do it for ourselves, we can start healing our relationship with ourselves. And then everything gets better. Can I share a story with you?
Yes, please.
So I'm a mom. I have two kids who are now 15 and 11. And my son, this was probably about 4 years ago or so. I think he was 7 or 8 years old. And his class had a pajama party just before the holidays. So he had his little pajamas on, and he has like a little cute little robe. So we put that on, and I take him to school. We're driving over, and he's in the car with me. And just as he's about to get out, he has one of those moments, like I'm sure we've all had in a moment, goes, "Mom, are you sure that today is the day of the pajama party?" Because God forbid, could you imagine? He walks in and he's the only kid in pajamas. And I just couldn't resist that teachable mom moment where I might be talking the talk, may not be walking the walk, but I was like, hey, listen, if you go in today and nobody else is wearing pajamas, first of all, it is pajama day, so don't worry. But if you went in and you were the only one wearing pajamas, what could you do about it to make that work in your favor? Own it, right? Walk in as if you own it. I said to him, I'm like, you could say to all of your friends, didn't you get the memo? You didn't. It's Kieran's pajama party. Don't worry. You're still invited, even if you're not wearing pajamas. I'll be the only one. That's okay. You can still do it. And of course, he rolled his eyes at me. Oh, Mom. And I started to think as I was coming home, I thought, if I was at a work function and I was underdressed, overdressed, heaven forbid I was wearing pajamas and I walked into a cocktail party, would I own the room like that? Probably not.
Really?
That was my first inclination. It's like, I would probably run over and call my husband, can you give me a change of clothes? Whatever. I would probably do that. And I thought, I can't have my son build that unshakable confidence simply by telling him. I have to model it. I have to be it. And if I want him to do it, I should want me to do it. So I decided, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to make this happen? So a month later, I was actually speaking at a conference in Detroit, and I decided that I was going to speak at the conference in my pajamas.
Cue Lindsay's heart pounding.
And I did. But you know what the amazing part about that was? I was in a room full of these women executives, amazing women. I walked in with my winter coat so they couldn't quite see. I shared the story of my son. And then I like took off the winter coat like I was stripping on stage. Had my pajamas on, got everybody up to do a dance with me. It was Keka's pajama party. But the whole time I was doing this, I kept thinking to myself, I'm going to be able to show my son, if I can do it, you can do it. But this is the beautiful part was that, you know, in trying to be his mom, he was my compass and he was my inspiration to push myself. But it's the kind of thing that now I'm way more conscious of. And I'm like, I want to be that person who is going to stand against the grain. If you look at Marilyn Monroe, you look at Madonna, you look at all of the different change makers in our world, when everybody would zig, they would zag.
Yeah.
And we all love them. We all follow them. And then somehow we forget when we're trying to be conforming that we put ourselves down. So what happens if we zag just like them? We love them. We all have icons that we love who have broken the status quo. So to me, it's let's take that inspiration and let's stand in our power, because when we do, people will applaud you. None of those women in that conference challenged me and said, I can't believe you did that in your pajamas. They actually applauded it because it does take courage and confidence, attract more confidence. Courage.
And when your comment about people will applaud you, the right people will applaud you.
Yes.
It's like when you put out a piece of work of some sort, you're a filmmaker, a writer, an author, whatever, and you get 500 amazing reviews and you get one critical person, and that's it. The only one we pay attention to is that. And it's the same thing. The right people will see you, will get you, will be here for it. But somehow, and actually this is a thing. Oh, I cannot remember right now. I wish I could. I don't remember what book it was from. Oh, I think it was from a podcast, actually. The Do You Effing Mind podcast. I forget her name. She's out of Australia. She's amazing. But she talked about how when there's positive things, we really minimize that and we amplify the negative things. The right people will love the pajamas, and the person who didn't get it. So we don't need to focus.
Who didn't get it, chances are there's something else for them that's standing in the way. Yeah. And that's okay. We had literally, Lindsay, okay, this might get into too many mom stories, but
I love it. Let's do it. Let's do the mom stories.
But my son came home from school yesterday and he said, well, Mom, we played dodgeball today at school and half of the class loves me and the other half of the class hates me. Yeah. And the first thing I think that I would typically say is, oh my God, why do they hate you? And I didn't.
Yes, see, we immediately go there. Yeah,
exactly. So in that moment, I consciously chose not to go there. And I said, wow, if half the class loves you and half the class hates you, it means you probably did something pretty right. Yeah. Yeah. Because you're never going to be able to make everybody happy and you don't need to. Yeah. So when you stand in your power, the people who are ready for your message will come and find you. They will appreciate you. And the people who won't, you can graciously give them some love and let them go their own way.
There's so many things I want to talk about here, but this is mirroring what we teach. I like you in branding and marketing and PR, me in just like business development, business strategy, business coaching. We teach this over and over that you want to have people who love you and people who don't. That's how you're figuring out your values, your identity, who you are, and standing in that. I work with a lot of beginners, and when they're getting their email list started, they've got a lead magnet, they're building their email list, they're putting content out, and they are living in terror of people unsubscribing. And it's like, you don't understand. That's not a bad thing. That's someone going, this person isn't for me. That means that you are standing up for something. You are being something. And I want to tie this back to what you said about we have a self-worth crisis. Because what I hear when you say that, what immediately popped into my brain is we have an identity crisis. Yes. Self-worth is tied to your identity. We actually were talking about that earlier before we recorded around hair and how hair is tied to our identity and our self-worth. What allows people to align to their values, to stand in their power, is knowing who they are.
Yes. Knowing who they are, because when you really get to know yourself and know who you are, you will love who you are. Yes. When I was a child, I had a Charlie Brown bowl. It had at the bottom of the bowl in a kind of like a semicircle smile formulation, it said, to know me is to love me.
Yes. I'm like, oh, I'm already getting shivers. I love that.
And you know, my mom always used to say, this is a really important lesson in life. You should always remember. And as a kid, I was like, to know me is to love me. At that time, I was like, I love me. I don't know what's going on. And as a kid, if you see a lot of young children, they embrace themselves. You look at a toddler, they own themselves. They love themselves. But somewhere down the road in our socialization, we start
Yeah.
saying, you're not fitting in, you're not doing
Yeah.
this, you should do that, you should be like everybody else, you
Yeah.
should do what other people are doing. And then we get beaten down. In the workshops I do, I call it being emotionally dusty, mentally dusty. I have this like one exercise I do at schools where I'll have a child sit on a chair and then another person come in, and I love scarves, as you know, I always wear scarves. And so I have a bag full of scarves and I say, okay, so tell me, I ask the kids in the classrooms, tell me some of the things that people say you should do or that you are when you might not be. And every time somebody lays that kind of like, you should be this or you are this, we're going to put a scarf on the kid sitting in the chair.
Ooh.
I've been at private schools where they say private school girls are snobby. Okay, a scarf goes over, you're snobby. If you have acne on your skin, you're not healthy. Okay, another one comes in here. Girls who are bossy are not nice. Okay, we just go through the kinds of things that people prescribe. And inevitably, in the span of a couple of minutes, this poor kid in the middle of this chair has like a scarf over him. And then here's what happens in our everyday school systems, and not just school, but just generally in society. We then as adults go to the child and say, shine and be yourself. You can do it. You can be yourself. So on one hand, we're putting all of these layers and these layers upon layers. We're completely covering up who they are and telling them they shouldn't be who they are. And then we give them that lovely piece of advice, like I did as a mom before I went up on stage with pajamas, telling my son, you should own it. You should do this. And the only way we can shine as ourselves is if we remove all of those layers of dust. And so visually representing that, we start pulling all of the layers of the scarves out, and then it's, oh, ta-da, you're actually underneath there. And it's to know me is to love me. We forget to start to recognize and embrace who we are. And in branding, that's a key thing that I do. Like Lindsay, when I work with clients, I'm okay, so tell me what's unique about you. What makes you different than anybody else? What do you fight for? What are you passionate about? Most of us in our everyday lives do not ever have the opportunity to get to know ourselves like that. We don't ask ourselves those questions. That in a branding case, I will, because I'm building someone's brand and showing that off. But if every child in this country could go through those exercises, start to really learn who they are, they can remove those barriers, those dust, all of that. Then they become, somebody will tell them something of, oh no, this doesn't feel right for me. And that's okay. And that's the difference.
So listening to you talk about the scarf experience, it's bringing like poof, snap-backing into my mind. This time I went away to work with somebody. My business, when I first started it, it was a time of incredible personal upheaval, deep healing work needing to happen, very traumatic experience. And then I also have my business. And as my business started to take off, I was starting to crumble under the weight of success and imposter syndrome and who am I and all of these things. And so I phoned up this person. I was like, all right, it's time to get to work. We need to get to work. I need to work through some of this. And I went away for a weekend and we really dug into a lot of things. And even though it was for my business, of course it was, we need to look at me. I need to look at what's going on here for me. And I remember having this experience after of feeling like I had literally taken off a cloak of everybody else's expectations and who they told me I was and who I thought I had to be. And that same idea of this cloak that I was wearing that wasn't mine. And I had felt so disconnected from who I was. The thing is, it was always there. It was always there. And like you said, when you can just say to someone, just shine, it is there, but you have to first strip away what's not yours.
Yes, 100%. And I think that the freedom that so many of us are longing is that freedom. And I think in the pandemic, that really, shone a spotlight on this lack of freedom that we have, because yes, we're now stuck in the house, or yes, we can't see everybody else, but suddenly we had to be with ourselves. And we had to actually face the reality of the life we were living, and we could see everything that didn't work amplified, everything that worked amplified too, but we're used to giving more credence to the negative voices. So then we're in this like echo chamber of all the things that don't work. And we have to see ourselves when we don't want to. And this is where we are emerging, where we have a lot of healing to do as a society, as a group. And it starts individually, as you said, because we can't feel free until we are who we are inside. And I think that we underestimate the impact that dynamic can have on our lives.
Yes. So do you, or have you noticed a difference in your approach to what you do because of the pandemic and because of what's come up for you?
Yes, I have. I think that a lot of people today, I'm finding, are more cognizant of the fact that my mental health is not great, or there's more permission to say, yeah, this really sucks, or I'm just not happy. Where I think pre-pandemic, we were pretending everything was great. Everything's great. I'm going out drinking with my friends, or I'm going to go binge watch something on Netflix. I don't have to think about anything. Like, we were keeping ourselves busy in a way that would allow us to run away. And then 2 years of like facing the mirror and going, oh my God, it has collectively allowed us to say, yeah, I'm not feeling good. I'm not good. And so that, I think, is opening the door today for much more meaningful conversation, because now these messages that we're sharing can meet people where they're ready.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the time before, there were some people that were ready, but not everybody. And I think many more people now are recognizing, I just don't want to feel this way anymore. And I know that by talking about it or embracing this, I have to do something different in order to change the way that I feel.
And I think it's really important to note too, as well, that's not a personal deficiency. Not feeling good is not, that's by design in a lot of ways. That is all the systemic, and this is what we're seeing, the systemic issues within our society have created a way that we relate or don't relate, connect or don't connect, that has created separation, that has created an unnatural way of existing.
Here's the thing, as a brand marketer, I can tell you that typically, even outside of social media messages, which we're tied to our phone so often, the average person is exposed to over 5,000 messages. We're talking billboards, TV, whatever it might be, right? From the time you wake up in the morning, not including all the social media we consume, we are exposed to 5,000 messages a day. Our brains cannot handle that kind of intake. So then we take things as it comes. But here's the thing, most of these messages that we're getting are advertising messages. And advertising messages, I'm not a anti-advertiser, obviously I work in the industry and I think there's a place for it. But the other thing that we have to be cognizant of is advertising is based on the fact that you need something from us. If I am trying to sell you something and you don't think you need it, you're not going to buy it. So then I'm going to tell you that your teeth are not white enough. They need to be fluorescent white, no matter how natural any other color is. So you need my teeth whitener. Your hair might not be shiny enough and you can make it so much better and it's expected that you do. So buy this shampoo. Your labels on your clothes judge who you are. Therefore, you have to pay exorbitantly amount this much more. So we are constantly being told how deficient we are simply from the nature of selling. And if we are not conscious of that ourselves, then I am going to think my hair is not shiny enough. The teeth whitening commercials I find really funny because there are some words, I can't go onto Zoom and smile in public because my teeth are not white enough. I can't show it. Or I'm not going to go out today because I just don't have white teeth. And someone's, well, use this whitener. Now you can go out. And now you see them in the coffee shop with big smiles. And so we're subliminally giving people social cues of what they should or shouldn't do when they feel like they're not enough or they are. And so when you get 5,000 messages like that every single day, constantly telling you what you need, how are you going to stand in your power? That's what happens. And actually, this is something that I experienced firsthand that I like, it hit me. So I was working on a project with a fellow entrepreneur and we had gone to Colombia, to this like tiny little town called Tuchin. So my friend Lisa Ferguson, she was doing this program called Dream to Dream. We were working with fellow artisans, looking at their craft and kind of creating products and bringing it here. So I was there for a week and we were it's a tiny town that was like 2 main buildings and everything else are like small little shops. The most amazing people in the world you could meet, the nicest people. So me and 3 other girls were in the one solid condo building in the town, but it was brand new. And there was like not a mirror to be had anywhere. And we literally had these air mattresses and a fan because it was like 40 degrees and 90% humidity. So something to keep us sane. And so the entire 7 days that I was there, I used the camera on my phone to brush my teeth and to do my hair. Although when you're sweating profusely in that kind of humidity, you don't really care. I didn't wear any makeup because it would have just come off in 2 seconds anyway. And what I recognized on the last day that I was leaving is that the entire time that I was there, I didn't once care about my outfit. I didn't care about how it looked. I've been conscious of my body. I've had 2 babies. I've got a bit of a mummy pooch on my tummy because people have told me, oh, you're getting weight in your tummy, Keka. That's not going to be good for you. And so I've internalized all those things. And so most days, if I'm going to the office or whatever, I'll fidget with my clothes, just like we all do. And it didn't once occur to me. Why? Because in Tuchin, there weren't any massive billboards. There was no television for me to watch.
Yeah.
There was nothing else except the amazing company of the fellow human beings I was with.
Yeah.
And there were no mirrors reminding me of all my physical flaws. And it hit me like a ton of bricks how much those influences impact us. And my home is full of mirrors.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so we're constantly looking at how we look, and we get into this pattern of looking at ourselves based on the flaws we see.
Yeah.
And
Which aren't flaws, by the way. We don't
they're
have flaws. They're not flaws. You're
They are
just
not.
you.
And here's
Yeah.
the thing, if you ask your best friend, if you ask the people who love you the most about yourself,
Yeah.
like my kids or my husband, they couldn't care less about my tummy and whether it bulges. It does not matter to them. And it makes me start to think that I have to consciously edit and at least be aware of where the messages are landing. Because as soon as you become aware, you can start to reframe, you can focus on different things.
Yeah.
But if you're not aware, which many of us are not, because this is all subliminal messaging,
Yeah.
it affects us in a profound way.
Yeah. And it's not just advertisers, it's everything. It's the movies you watch, the TV shows, it's the books you read, it's the stories you're told as a kid. And it's not just advertisers, it's everywhere. But of course, that's media is media, wherever you're consuming it. And there is this, that's why I say, friends, you don't internalize it. It's not a you problem. It is a societal issue that we've created. Because even to hear you say, to look at my flaws, your body doesn't have flaws. Friends, your body, you don't have flaws. You don't have flaws. You have a body. I've been doing a lot of work over the past year or so, past 6-7 months, really understanding fat phobia and anti-fat bias and where that comes from, the many roots that comes from, and the many ways that impacts us. And a part of waking up, as you say, a part of becoming aware of this insidious, harmful messaging that you are internalizing from a very young age is there is going to be, at least for me and a lot of people I've talked to, there is this period of anger, of grief, of mourning, of feeling betrayed, of feeling harmed, because you've looked at yourself in a negative way for so long as something flawed to be fixed and just by this thing. And when you realize that you're not, and you start to really see yourself and really see others and really come to appreciate the diversity in everything from eye shape to nose shape to teeth to body to height to width. This person's neck is long, this person's neck is short. Like, you start to really see the diversity in human beings and appreciate our mere existence and how absolutely ridiculous it is that some dude at a desk is approving a campaign to tell you that your teeth are not white enough, that your pores are too big, that we also talked about pores before we hit record, that your car isn't the right car, that your shoes aren't the right, you start to see the ridiculousness of it, and it loses its hold on you. And that's just one facet in terms of capitalism, consumerism, right? We can even throw white supremacy into that. That's just one facet. But really, truly, the more that you know yourself, accept yourself, love yourself, and then can extend that same love and acceptance and compassion to others, the less that hogwash marketing has a pull on you, and you can just exist and just be happy and be connected.
Yeah. And I love what you said, Lindsay, that obviously I'm in marketing, so I'm talking about this because it's what I know, but it's not just marketing. It is our whole system of socialization.
Yeah.
I remember working early on in my career with a boss that I just thought was brilliant. I thought she was like, I was a sponge. I wanted to learn everything off of her. I thought she was so intelligent, so young, and so accomplished. And in our department, it was her. And I remember in one of my performance interviews, she had said, "You're not a very strategic person and you're not a creative person, but that's okay. You can surround yourself by other people who are creative and you can manage things this way." And I walked away from that performance interview thinking, I always thought I was a creative person.
I was going to say, what?
And I wanted to be a strategic person because I like that value. I like that kind of thinking. And so I was like, okay, she told me that this is what it is and I'm going to have to surround myself. I took her words to heart, but I said, but I'm not going to just surround myself. I'm going to build myself up. I can get creative and I can get strategic. So I'm going to keep working to do this. This is the fighter in me that I got from my mom. She's she's that feisty woman who's, oh yeah, watch me. So I feel like I got that from her and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Fast forward now, a few years later, I'm working at an ad agency downtown. It was like the hottest shop in Canada at the time. Like, just, I worked with the most brilliant people and I was in my element. I loved everything about it. I had a new boss now who was even more accomplished and like just brilliant. And in my very first performance interview in that job, it said, what goals do you want to achieve? And I put, I want to be more strategic and I want to be more creative. So what can I do? And here's the opportunities I'd like to pursue to get this. And my new boss, who had been there, I think maybe about 6 months at the time, she says to me, and I still remember where I was sitting in the boardroom, like how it all played out, because it really stuck with me. And she said, I was really surprised by the fact that you wrote that these are your 2 goals. Why is that? And I said, know that I'm not that creative and I just really want to become, and then she stopped me and she said, Keka, I think you're one of the most creative people in our division. And I think you are highly strategic. I just don't understand where this is coming from. And then I knew where it was coming from because it was those words from my former boss that were stuck to me. And I thought, oh, I just took her words at face value.
Yeah.
I didn't question it, even though it felt incongruent. It didn't feel like me. I was like, I am a creative person. And that's when I started to look back and I thought, oh, wait a minute. My mom is a singer. She's a classical Indian musician, composer, lyricist. I was 3 years old the first time I performed on stage with her. I actually directed my first children's play at her temple when I was 7.
Oh, wow.
I have been doing theater all my life. I went to a specialized music theater program in high school where the acceptance rate was 25% for girls. So for every 1 girl that was accepted, 3 girls were rejected.
Yeah.
And I got in and I loved it. And I graduated with honors. There were so many proof points in my life that showed me how creative I was, how strategic I was. And I forgot all of that because this one boss gave me this critique that made me feel like I'm not enough. She also used to tell me that I was argumentative. Like, you're always argumentative. You're always argumentative. And that I did fight in my own head one day, argumentative. I came home one day and I thought, I find it really odd that she's the only person in all my social circles who always tell me I'm argumentative. Because I debated. I actually used to represent my country at the World Debating Championships in university. Like, definitely argument is in my vernacular, but I like to think that I do it in a constructive way. I like to think that I do it in a respectful way, not where it gets annoying for other people. Clearly this was annoying for her. And I started to think that in none of my other circles, in any other place, in other schools, other programs, nobody's ever told me that. And then I started to realize that she didn't want me to disagree with her.
Yeah.
And so anytime I voiced my opinion or made a contribution, it was going against her and she got irritated. So thankfully in that moment, I guarded myself and I'm like, oh no, wait a minute. I'm not going to change myself. But this is the kind of thing that we do. We hear all the time from people. And sometimes people will give you those judgments based on something they're missing.
Yeah.
And we don't see that.
Yeah.
So and this is where I feel like when we do, if I could have everybody in the world do these branding exercises for themselves, oh my God, I would be so happy because it helps us to recognize and it gives us the language to ground ourselves. Yeah. So if we ask ourselves, who are we? What are we like? What are the values that we believe in? How do we make other people feel? Those are all questions brands have answers to. And so if we go out and say, okay, Lindsay, when you're with me, how do I make you feel? You're going to give me something that I could never articulate myself. But if I go out to 3 of my closest friends or 5 of my closest friends and I get that, then I can see, okay, so where are the proof points that really shows, yes, this is how I am. Then if someone else comes and tells me something completely different based on their own perspective, I don't have to accept it.
Yeah, that's about them. It is always question the source, who is saying it and why are they saying it, and go to the people you trust. If you're like, this is what somebody said to me and I want to just check in, is that true? Is that a thing? The people that love you, the people that you trust, they will tell you that. And that comes right back into we are afraid of our emotions. We don't talk about our emotions. There's that fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of whatever, not fitting in, not being accepted. And this book, Let It Be Easy by Susie Moore, I just finished reading that. That was a really fun one. And she talked about emotions. They last 90 seconds, right? Feelings, they last about 90 seconds before they're gone. And we will let those 90 seconds of discomfort completely derail us, stop us, hold us back.
And then we embrace it and we hold on to that.
And that's, that becomes our identity. That becomes and that's the way it's always going to be. And if someone says something to you and you're like, I don't know if that's true, let me check in. Or if they say that and go and you you have that moment of, I could see how that would be true. Let me check in. But again, that always is going to come down to knowing who you are, knowing who you are, knowing who you are. Yeah. So how does all of this tie into the art of lifing?
The art of lifing. Yes. Okay. The art of lifing. It's a personal development platform that I've created. And to me, it's it's principles and philosophies that we can use to actually do life on purpose and on our own terms. So it is this process of doing life intentionally when we're not on autopilot, when we're not just accepting what other people are telling us. And there's a funny story about how I came up with this, because lifing is obviously a word I've made up. If you think about the word adulting, like a lot of people are like, hey, look at me, I'm adulting. That's where it came from. I was like, I'm already an adult, so I can't really embrace that. I was like, but look at me, I am lifing. I am doing life on purpose. And it came from the place when I was talking about the living legacy letters. When I first started off, I was thinking I had written a living eulogy for my mom because I wanted her to know the impact she had on my life. I didn't have a chance to tell my dad that. He passed away in an accident pretty quickly in the hospital. He was there for 2 weeks before we lost him. So I didn't want to lose that opportunity with my mom. That letter, unbeknownst to me, validated her to her core in terms of who she was. Then I was like, I want the world to know this. I want everybody to do this. Let's write those letters to people that mean the most to us. But what I recognized, so I did a TEDx talk around gratitude and sharing that gratitude. But I realized, like I said, people are afraid of dying. They don't want to talk about death. A lot of people also are just not in touch with their emotions just yet. So to be able to write something, you have to be open enough to feel those things. And so not everybody's ready for this. However, we are all ready to live a better life. We are all ready to look at what can we do on purpose that can make our life better. And so late one night, I was coming back from another networking event, actually pre-pandemic, and I was driving in the car. I was coming along DuPont in Toronto, and it was raining. And I started to think about, what can I call this? Because everybody was saying Keka's the gratitude girl. And I was like, gratitude is one of the principles, but there's so much more to this. It's so much deeper. It doesn't stop at gratitude. But everyone's like, Keka's the gratitude girl. Her TEDx talk about gratitude. And I was like, the brand marketer in me was like, I need to come up with something better that really communicates what I'm trying to do. And that's where I was like, I'm adulting. I'm adulting on purpose, but I'm already an adult. So I can't really, I'm living life on purpose. I'm lifing. The art of lifing. And I just immediately fell in love with it. I literally pulled over and pulled out my phone and wrote it in my notes so I wouldn't forget. And that was where the art of lifing was born, was that whether you're at work, you're at school, you're at home, where you're traveling, whether you're a parent, you can apply the principles of lifing to everything you do. And today I've been able to get over the who am I syndrome. And I've gotten to the place where lifing to me is about recognizing and learning who you are, learning to accept yourself to your fullest extent, the way that brands do every day. And as soon as you do that, you can live life on purpose. That's what I teach.
I love that. And I think you might know this. I think a lot of people know this by now, but the radical connector, the radical in my name comes from radical self-acceptance, radical self-love, right? That is the key to changing the world.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Keka, this has been so wonderful. Friends that are listening, Keka has a YouTube channel, as well as you can find her on Instagram. You can find her on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, all the places. So those links are all going to be in the show notes. So go back to the show notes and go ahead and follow Keka all over. You are most active on YouTube, correct? You do a lot of YouTube there?
I do YouTube. Yeah, I'm active across all of the different channels, but YouTube is where I do a lot of my videos, and you can see a lot of my work there. Yeah.
I love it. Okay. So if you were to give 3 tips for somebody who wants to get started on the art of lifing, living with intention, living with purpose, living with acceptance and love, self-love, what would 3 tips be for someone to get started?
Oh, what a great question. Okay, Lindsay, the 3 things that I would say, I think that we have to actively practice being kinder to ourselves. That's the number one thing, right? Now it's easier said than done. So I usually give people an activity when I'm doing, because I do workshops and training programs at schools and organizations, and I'll give them homework and say, for the next 30 days, because 30 days is how long it usually takes to build a habit, get into the habit every morning when you get up in the morning, before you do anything else, because we all pick up the phone. Many of us pick up the phone, even though we shouldn't, right? But when you wake up in the morning, open up your notes, do a voice note, send an email to yourself, whatever the thing might be, but talk about and document something you are grateful about yourself. Because gratitude is important and we often practice it with I'm grateful for the birds, I'm
Yes.
grateful for my husband. But what are you grateful for about yourself? It'll force you to start thinking about yourself differently.
Yeah.
And anything and everything. But if you do that over 30 days, you're going to have a really beautiful list of all the things that you actually can see in yourself you don't see every day. So that's number one. Number two, what I have asked people to do is, this is a hard one. So you have to like really give yourself, might not feel good, but it's going to make a massive difference for yourself, is one day, give yourself 15 minutes. You don't have to give yourself any more than that, 15 minutes. Sit down with, and I'm like a Gen Xer, so I'm like pen and paper, but sit down and write a letter to your young self. So think of yourself when you were 8 years old, for example, and write to yourself about all of the things about your life today that you admire.
Yeah.
So dear 8-year-old Keka, let me tell you what I admire about 48-year-old Keka. Today, Keka does this and this. Keka feels this way. Keka looks at all of these things, and it actually starts to force you to look at yourself in third person. And sometimes when people struggle with this, what I will do is say, warm up first. So think of a celebrity, a public figure, someone alive or dead, someone you really admire, and write something you admire about themselves. That will get your juices flowing about thinking. Because if you're really struggling, that's a good way to warm yourself up, and then write a letter to yourself. Lindsay, I get so many people who, when they write this in the workshops, and these are like CEOs of companies with massive programs, they're crying.
Yeah.
They cry because it's like a connection to yourself.
I remember doing a workshop somewhere, I don't remember where now, and I had them make a list of, I think, like 6 things or 5 things that they were proud of themselves for, and how many people couldn't do it.
Couldn't do it. It's hard.
Couldn't do it. And once you get going, you start to realize there are a lot of things.
Yeah.
But yeah, this idea of being proud of yourself, admiring yourself, that can be very challenging for you.
It can. Yeah. And that's why I say start with 1 a day.
Yeah.
Because you can wake up and you might just say, I'm proud of myself because I'm doing this.
Yeah.
It can start by that. I'm proud of myself that even though I'm struggling, I haven't gotten rid of the effort. It can be like that. Absolutely. And then the third thing that I advocate for on the Art of Lifing is finding inspiration every single day. In the same way that we nourish our bodies with food, the same way that we exercise to keep our bodies healthy, we have to nourish our minds. And we might not realize the negative impact that can take its toll when we're constantly bombarded with news of the war, news of the pandemic, news of death. There's so much going on around us that can have an unconscious impact on us. So it's important to find that inspiration. So that might be listening to an inspirational podcast, could be looking at Goalcast or one of the internet properties. It could be watching a show. It could be reading a quote from a book. It could be anything that works for you, but nourish your mindset, your heart, and your soul with something inspirational every day, even if it takes 30 seconds to read a quote. Do something for yourself every day. So if you start with those 3 things, I can guarantee you're going to be well on your path to the Art of Lifing. The work is transformative. It makes a big difference.
And I love how much it's focused on you. Like you're focusing on you, you're tapping into you. These are the steps to connecting and knowing who you are. I love it. I love it. All right, Keka, before we go, I have one last question for you to answer. So the Work Less, Play More podcast, play is always what I want to do more of. Work is always what I want to do less of. I would love for you to fill in the blanks. If you fill in the blank, work less, blank more, what is yours?
Okay. So at the beginning of our conversation, when we were starting the podcast, I was initially thinking about that I would probably say work less and mom more, because I love being around my kids, and that's all. Work is always, it takes time away from being a parent and that. But I think that what I would say to, like, now based on what we've all talked about, because I'm going deeper in the iceberg. So it's like work less, mom more. But if I'm like, what does that really mean? What am I really trying to say? I would say work less, be more.
Yes.
That is the lesson that I am trying to learn myself too, is just be yourself. How comfortable are you just sitting and being with yourself? Because I know for me, for a really long time, I was not comfortable. I'm still not a master of it, but I'm working on it.
Yes.
So it's like, that is the practice. Be more, work less, be more.
Brilliant. What? Thank you so much. It's funny, friends, because this is not what we meant to talk about. We were going to talk about something very different. But as I say to all my podcast guests, I don't pre-write questions. I don't do that, because the conversation tends to go where it wants to go. And I know there are people listening right now that needed to hear Keka's wisdom today and Keka's stories today. So thank you so much for sharing that. This has been beautiful.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Lindsay. Thank you so much for having me and helping me to share this message, because I think we all need this collectively, myself included. We're in this together. We're not alone. We can do this. And the challenges we're facing are similar challenges that everyone around us are facing. We just don't always know it.
Yes, I love it. Friends, be sure to go check out the show notes. I have all of Keka's contact information there. You can find her on YouTube, youtube.com/sleep. If you don't know that, you don't need to, you can just search her. Anyways, it's Art of Lifing with Keka. That is Keka, Art of Lifing with Keka on YouTube. Go and check that out. Go and consume more of her glorious content. Follow her on the socials, connect with her, check out her platform, because, oh God, we all need it. We all get to be a part of living on purpose, living with purpose, having that self-love, having that self-acceptance, and being a part of making the world a better place just by being a more confident, loving you. I love it.
Yay. I want to applaud that message. It's so awesome.
All right, Keka, thank you so much. We'll talk to you real soon.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Friends, thank you so much for listening in. You'll find all the links to all the resources we discussed over on theradicalconnector.com/podcast. Entrepreneurship is a tool for creating the life of your wildest dreams. It is not meant to take over your entire life. If you're ready to work less and play more, get on my email list or contact me directly, and let's talk about how we can get your business working for you so you can build the life of your wildest dreams and get out there and change the world. Happy connecting. Bye for now.